Okay, so hi everyone. So last day, yesterday, I was taking this cloning. So one topic left over there, I want to discuss that, and I told I'll give some idea what is the difference between a map and flat map. So those part I'll try to cover first. Then we can see other things also. Okay. So let me quickly share my screen. Okay. So we have seen all these examples yesterday, right? For cloning, like how we can create a clone which do a deep copy, right? Which will create a new memory and the content of one object will be copied into another, right? So we also seen how the default clone implementation of the object class works, right? We say it's a bitwise copy. So exactly what is there in the memory of one object will be copied to another memory. So now I'm just want to show you some complicated issue based on which usually the questions are designed. So suppose uh, I have a class initially which represents a department. So inside department, I'll store some department information. So this is visible, right? The screen. Hello. Can anybody?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
sir.
So I'll have this D name. I can have a constructor to initialize this department. Um, I can have a string D, and this D name will be the D. And maybe for setting the value, I can have a function because I want to change the values, right? For cloning. So I can have a set D name. So in which I can pass some string D, which will set over here. And also, if I pass a department object inside a print or println statement, I want it to be printed. So what I'll do, I'll basically overwrite the toString implementation, right? So it's a toString. So I want it will return department equal to whatever the D name is, right? Now I want to create another class which is an employee, which will have an ID, which will have a name, and which will also have a department. So this DEPT basically is an object of the department class. So I mean to say what our employee will have, it will have an ID and a string and a department which is DEPT, which is of department type. Now how I can initialize it? Somebody, I can expect like somebody will pass these three informations. Suppose user will pass the ID as an I, string as an N, and the department as a string N. So how do I do the initialization? ID is straight I, then name is N, but DEPT is an object of department class. So I have to do a new department, and I'll pass, this is department name, right? I'll pass the department name as an object. So I'm passing here a string, but I need a department object to be created. So what I'm doing, I'm creating an object of the department, and whatever the string I'm passing it to the constructor of the department here, right? So that will become my DPT inside my employee. Okay. Now if I have to set everything, so I can have several uh, modifiers, right? mutators, sorry, not modifiers. So I can have a void set ID. I'll be able to pass an I and which internally change the ID. And I can have something to change the name. I can have void set name. I can have string n, name equal to n. And somebody want to change the department name. So I can have a set t name also. So where people can say what is the new department name. Now how do I change it? I have my dpt object on which I cannot change this d name directly because it's a private within the department class. So for department, what I can do, I can call this set dname function through which I'll be able to change the department name, right? So I'll be passing this dn. So this basically change everything over there. Now if I want to print it, like I pass our employee object into a print or println statement, I need to override the toString function. I say return, right? ID is a ID, name as a name, plus department equal to plus dpt. See, dpt is an object, right? So if I print it, it basically calls for dpt.toString, and toString what it will do, it's basically returning the department name. So maybe I don't give this. This is not required, right? Because I'm already printing as a department equal to dpt. So just returning this will be fine. Okay, now I want to make this clone of the employee. The simple way, if I want to do it, e equal to new employee, and I want to initialize the things. Suppose I have 10, then I'll have some name. I say ABC and department say IT. Okay. Now, so it's a E1. Say I want to create another employee, E2, and I don't want to use a clone. I want to just do a shallow copy first. I want to do a shallow copy first. I want to see what happens if I do a shallow copy, although we know it because we have done it last day in quite detail. Just to test it once, println. I'll just pass E1. So if I call for E1, it's basically E1 dot toString. So toString will give you the formatted string, right? E2. But what I want to do after doing a shallow copy, I want to change the value of E1. So I say set ID, say I'll modify it to 20. I say E1 dot set name. I say it becomes XYZ, and E1 dot set dname. I say it becomes sorry, this is a function, right? I want to make it as a ops, right? So there are some changes I have done, and I want to quickly see what happens. Okay, this is again the same problem we are facing from yesterday, right? This one, we need to change it to main. Okay, so actually we can see both are getting modified, although I'm making changes on E1. So the simple reason we have seen on the last day, what happens if I create a E1, right? What happens if I create a E1? So on the heap, so suppose this is the heap, inside that a memory will be allocated for me because I'm using a new, right? So new will be able to allocate this memory. Inside that I'm putting these values, right? So I'll have inside this kept as a 10. I'll have this A, B, C. and I'll have, so this DPT, so this is basically, if you look at inside the employee, this is a reference, right? So what is happening here? I'm getting a reference here. So this is ID, this is name, and this is DPT. So DPT is actually is a reference. So here I'll put a reference which is pointing to somewhere where I'll have this again, this department class information, right? So this is a class, this is the employee object. So employee object internally keeping a reference to the department object. So if you say the department is ID, so here also a memory will be placed here. You'll have this ID. Up to this, is it clear? This is a reference to this one, right? Okay. Now, whenever I do a shallow copy, so I told this is a shallow copy, right? So if I just say it is a E2 equal to E1, that means it basically refers to the same thing, right? So that's why whenever I say next E1 dot set ID, so actually the change is happening on the same memory space. So it is affecting this thing. This is getting 20, this is getting XYZ, and this is getting ops, right? So now if I check with E1 and E2, I'm going to get the same values for both the references, right? So cloning, I do why I do, if I say, instead of doing this, if I can write here this clone, what's supposed to happen? It basically creates another memory entirely for E2. It makes E2 to point to this, and it basically copy the entire bitmap over this memory object into this. So rather than pointing to the same memory space, it creates two different memory spaces, but it copy the same thing into two things, two different memories. But that gives you an opportunity that every memory can be, each of the memory can be changed independently, right? So this is what I want to do, and that's called a deep copying. So let us do the deep copying. So as you know, last I have shown, if you want to do a deep copying for the employee class, the first thing you have to do, you have to implement a class which is called cloneable class. I told cloneable is a special kind of interface, not class. It is an interface which calls markup interface. So what the markup interface do? It's basically do a marking for a class. It do not have any method, any abstract method. It's basically an empty interface. So it marks the class that this class can be, for this class object, you can create a clone, right? Now, the second thing you have to do, you have to implement the clone method, override the clone method. I told the clone is defined as a protected inside the object class, right? So that's why you directly cannot use a clone method here. So if you try to run this in this form, it will give you a compiler error. But what I do now overwrite it as a public, right? Because if it is protected, I can extend the scope, right? If it is a protected, I can make it public, but I cannot give a much stricter kind of access modifier. So I can make it as a public. Then I want to do cloning. So clone normally returns an object type. So here, as I know, it's specifically employee, I can return an employee, and I say it's a clone. Clone. Now clone throws a checked exception. Throws a checked exception. So which calls a clone not supported exception. So since it is a checked exception, either you have to do a throw or you have to keep the entire code inside it in a try catch block, right? Now, what is the simple way of cloning? So you can just call the clone method from the Super class means what is the default clone is there in the object class, which will copy the entire memory into another memory. So I can use that because that's the default thing I want to do. So I do super. So super is my object class dot clone. Okay. Now clone returns an object. That's why I need to cast it to an employee. Right? Because this is the inboxing happening, a downcasting. Okay. So up to this it is done. Now how do I write the code? Again, if I want to call this clone method, either I have to do a throws or I have to keep the enter code in a try catch because it fires a checked exception. So I say try. The entire code I put into the try. Okay. Then I say catch. Inside that I will catch this checked exception. Okay. So my code is done. So I want to test it now. Of now see, interestingly, you can find what the difference. So let me give a space over here so that it becomes much clearer. See, you can see for E1, this became 20, this became XYZ, and E1 storing the old value. So you can definitely understand for these two fields, it is using two different spaces, right? But I cannot see the changes in the department, right? So you need to understand clearly where is the problem. So this is why I wanted to show, even I'm doing the cloning, I'm not getting this is cloned, right? So it is getting a shallow copy, this part, but rest of the two fields are getting a deep copy. So that's the problem is. So let us try to understand what is the issue. So
So class wise, we have only the employee class. Starting there is no separate department class, no. Starting,
yeah,
okay, we have a department class. Okay,
ha,
okay.
ha, ha. I've wrote it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then I'm calling the constructor over here, right? To
Mm-hmm.
initialize the
Yeah,
department,
yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
So this is the issue.
Mm.
Now exactly this is where the question will be asked, okay? Because other things are very straightforward. It may not be directly like a department, it could be in a different way, but if you understand this, like the entire cloning problem is solved, basically. Okay. So first I'm creating a E1. So I'm having my, this is the hip. So I'm taking a bit bigger this memory. Then I'm allocating a chunk of memory to allocate an employee object. So this is, suppose I store a employee object over here. So inside employee, what we'll have here, inside this, we'll have an ID. So ID, I have this 10. Then you have name. Name I have kept ABC. And then I have, see here, department, which is a class type, right? Which is basically a reference type. So DEPT is what? DEPT basically stores a reference, right? So it's basically a reference. So what it referred to, it's basically referred to an object of department because it is basically pointing again to a department and department memory is created separately. So this is doing what? It is creating another space over here, which is for the department. Now in the department, what you will have? Inside the department, you are storing the value. So I have stored the value IT inside this. Right. So this is the way the object will be created. for E1. So if I say E1, what is the ID? So it's E1 ID. If I say E1 dot name, so this is ABC. If I say E1 department, now department itself is a reference which will find out what is the D name. So this variable name is D name, right? Inside your department class. Inside your department class. So what I'm doing, I'm passing it is a constructor within the constructor, and this is going into your D name. So it's basically stored into the department D name variable. Okay. Next, I'm doing a cloning here, right? For E2. So cloning means it will create another separate space. So it will allocate a new memory for E2. So that is the idea for a cloning, right? You'll get a different memory allocated. So E2 will be this. Now enter memory, this memory, whatever you have, this will be copy pasted over here. So it's a bitwise copy. So exact things will be copied here. So if I do the exact copy, so this ID will come as an ID which will have this 10. Name will come here as ABC, and DPT will come over here which will have a reference. But reference to what? This reference, it is the same reference which is copy pasted over here. So actually it will point to this only. Now you can understand the problem. If I do a set, right, with E1, so I say set ID to 20, so I don't have a problem. It is getting 20, so it is still 10. So this is correct. Then if I say set name XYZ, so this is getting changed. This is getting a XYZ. But here I don't have any change. It's okay. It's a dip copy. Now if I say set DPT name to oops, so this is pointing to what? This is basically pointing to this memory. So this is getting changed to ops, right? So that means whenever you want to find out the E1.id, it's say 20. If you say E1.name, it says XYZ. But if you say E1.department, it says ops. If you say E2.id, it says it's 10. E2.name, it's ABC. But if you still say E2.department, it's basically pointing to the same memory once again. So it again will say ops. So this is not cloned, right? This part. But rest of the part are cloned. Means I mean to say this part is a shallow copy. It is a shared memory between E1 and E2. But rest of the things are getting a deep copy. So up to this, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So now my objective is for this one also I need to make a deep copy. Means I have to have a different memory for the department, and I need to make this point to this instead of pointing to this. Right? That will solve my problem. So department also has to be clonable. So if I want to make department clonable, the syntactically it's very simple if you have the idea. So you'll write implements now, it's also clonable. Right, and you should also override the clone here. It's a public. I want to return a department. I want to override this clone, and it throws a checked exception. Clone not supported, right? And I do return super. So it depends on the default this thing. What is cloning happening? This is. But I need to do some modification over here. What modification I will do? Okay. So first I need to copy the object. So what I can do, first I'll get a copy of this. So let me hold in a temporary variable. So I say employee equal to current super dot clone. So super dot will by default clone everything. Everything in the sense this part. This part is copied into this along with the same reference. I'm holding it into a temporary variable E. Then what I am doing, I say E dot department. Now my problem is with only this field. I want to recreate this field. I say make it point to, the department must points to what? It should points to what?
A new
DEPT dot clone.
clone one.
The
Clone one.
existing department. So this is your department. It will have a clone over here. Now this department will refer to this, right? So I've copied it. So instead of E, maybe it is easier I just as a new E. So it's a temporary variable, right? Now I'll return this. I'll first show you how this code will work. Okay. Then I'm running this. Okay, I can run and show if it is executing or not. Okay. So I'm calling clone, right? What is the problem? Oh, it returns an object, right? Because it employee. Same thing here. Here I'm returning department, right? So I have to go object to department. Okay, so I'm getting enter cloned, right? So let us try to understand the logic line by line. So I start the execution from here. This is the line I'm starting with. So I have E1, right? For which I'm getting an employee object first. So this is an employee object. Okay. So if I send a 10, 10 goes into the variable ID. So I have a ID inside it, which will be initialized with 10. Then this ABC will go into this name. So this name will become A, B, C. Then next part is this DEPT is a reference because I'm creating an object separately with a new DEPT. It's a reference. So here I'm creating a separate department object, right? So department object having a dname variable inside, right? Which is getting initialized with this IT because I'm passing this DN into this, which will go into this dname, right? So this will get into an IT. So this is how this E1 will be created. So E1 is basically pointing to this. Okay. Now, moment I say employee E2 equal to assigned to E1.clone, lot of things happens inside. Let us try to find out what is happening. First, I get a reference E2. Since I called for a cloning and employee class is a clonable, I get a memory allocate for storing employee object, which will have all these fields: ID, name, and DEPT. Now let us see what is happening in the cloning. So first I say clone everything. First I say clone everything. Okay. For employee. So 10 comes here. Now ABC also comes here. And this reference will be copied as it is. That means it is pointing to this. This first step is happening. Next step, what I'm doing, Okay, and I'm keeping the reference to new E. So I'm creating a new E reference and putting this refer to this. This is the first step, right? This is exactly happening when I'm calling this line. So it's copying everything inside my employee object into this and storing it into a reference new. Now you say I'm modifying the department part. So I say now clone the department. Now DPT is which part? DPT is basically this part. So if I clone this, so I'm getting a DPT over here, department object over here, which will have this D name, which is IT, but it is copied into a different memory. And I'm making my new this DPT to point to this new instance. So new E, this will now point to this. So what will happen as a result? This reference has gone. Now it is pointing to the new instance. Now I return the new E and I'm putting it into E1. So that means this is now pointing to this. Okay. Now I'm modifying to E1. So I say E1 20. So this gets modified to 20. This gets modified to XYZ. This get modifies to ops. But does it affect any way this? No, no. So all are deep copied. So that is my solution, right? So that's how whenever you use any reference type within your clonable class, that reference, that class also has to be clonable, right? Otherwise that part won't be deep copied, right? So the idea is if you are having a clonable class and that's having a member instance variable which is a reference type, which is a class type, right? Now that has to be also cloned properly. Otherwise, that part won't be deep copied. That gets only shallow copied. Right? So this is the most important part on the clonable which I have discussed. Okay, another.
Sir,
Okay, question.
this
Yeah,
line
yeah.
number 48, this throws clone not supported exception.
Uh-huh.
What situation this exception will be thrown?
This is a checked exception. No, whenever I was doing a exception, I told you a checked exception and unchecked exception. So unchecked exception, you may handle it, may not handle it, but checked exception, you must be handling it, right? Either you have to throw it, or maybe you have to do it, put it on a try catch block. So this clone method, which is defined inside your object class, basically throws this clone not supported exception. Since it throws this exception, you need to explicitly handle it. That's all.
Okay, okay,
So this is a type of checked exception.
okay.
So you cannot avoid it. So if you look at the Java documentation, any function you are using, any method you are using inside your program, which throws a checked exception, just makes a throws over here or put your enter code into try catch. That is the idea. Okay, so another thing I am supposed to show you that is difference between a map and flat map. So again, I'm saying this is not required for your exam. This is there in your teaching what professor has taught, but it's the implementation wise it's a bit difficult. It's a complicated concept, but I'll show you with a program. Syntactically you may find it little difficult because I may be using some functions which we have used in week 9, but I want you to be conceptually clear, so I want to show a program. Don't bother if you don't understand all the syntax properly. I'll just try to give some idea how it is working. Okay, so map you can remember, right? That you should know. The map will definitely come somehow in your all the exams. Okay. So let me start with the stream thing. So I just want to show you how it works. So just a small idea like how a map will work. So last day we have actually done this. I have shown some map last day, right? Which example I have given? Some iteration example I have shown, right? Let me check out. It should be good. I can show this one also. This is also fine. Okay. So I don't need everything. Okay, so I've actually discussed this. So what this stream.iterate will do, it creates an input stream, which will have the starting value 0. So it generates the first value as a 0. Then every time the value will be incremented by 10. And the condition is given. The filter is like it should stop whenever the value is becomes greater or equal to 100. Right? That was the condition. And this for each basically iterate and print it. It means the for every element generated in your input stream, do this, right? Call the println method. So in a normal way, it basically prints the value, like first value generated is 0, second 10, like it's every time getting incremented by 10. So it's 90, then it becomes 100. It's 100, it's a equal value, so it stop over there, it do not generate it. So for each element, if you want to implement some operation, suppose what I want to do, I want to double every value, right? I want to multiply every value by 2. So I say for every value imply the function that multiply the value with 2. So this was called as a, I told this is called as a lambda function, right? We learned lambda function also last year. So you can see every value is getting modified by, like multiplied by 2. So that was the idea how we used to use a map. Now there is a concept of map and flat map. Now theoretically saying, whenever we are using a multi-dimensional any data structure, it could be a multi-dimensional list, multi-dimensional array, right? A 2D array, 3D array, or anything, 2D array, a list of list, right? A list itself having elements which are again list. So that kind of situations, if you use a map, so if it is a list of list, every element of the list is a list. So map will be applicable to each list, and your output will be again list of list. Like uh, so, there will be a main list inside a list. Now on every element, your particular map will be working. Like if you say double, the first list having the value 1, 2, 3, and the second list having the value 4, 5, 6. This 1, 2, 3 will become as a list like a 2, 4, and 6, and the second will be also double like individually, but it comes as a two separate list. But flat map do what? Whatever the dimension you passed, it will flatten it into a single dimension. It flatten it in a single dimension. So right now you may not be able to understand or realize what is the use of it. But whenever you have a big data set, multi-dimensional data set, there will be a lot of use of it. So if you have done the data science part of it, right, the ML courses or not, I do not know. Sometime we do many things in pandas and all, right? So reduce the dimensions and all, which internally use this kind of technique to flatten multi-dimension in a single dimension. So just want to show one simple example. So don't worry if you don't understand this properly, but important you should understand the output properly, what is happening. So I take a list of string. So I say it's a words. So sorry. So what I can do, last day also I have done this. You can convert an array into a this thing, right? Last day we do what this kind of thing, right? You can remember. We can have str is array. Then we can have a array like ABC and XYZ. Right? If I want to generate a list out of it, so suppose I want to create an array list specifically. So we can create a list of string. Okay. So which will have this arrays dot as list. You have to pass this. So what will happen? This array will be converted into a list. Means the output of this will be something like this. There will be a list. Inside that there will be inside that there will be two strings. Right? One is ABC and another is there is another element XYZ. So it's nothing but converting your array to a list. Test it, is it working properly or not? Sorry. Yeah, that is what I was thinking because this intelligence was not coming. Last day I've already shown this, how you can do this. Now, what I want to do, my objective is to create list of lists. Means I want to split these characters out of the string. If I want, this has to be created like split it into multiple strings. Like I want to extract each character out of it. So if you look at here, this ABC I'm converting into a list, right? How I'm converting? I'll be splitting this into characters, right? So I'm splitting all the characters out of it. It's becoming a list of the characters. Characters are coming although as a string over here. So this will have the elements A, B, and C. And second one also getting split into X, Y, and Z. So if you look at here, this is a list which consists of again two lists. Now technically how I can define this? I'll write a list within which we'll have a list. List of what? List of strings. So outside this is a list, inside this is a list. Each element is string. So this is how I define it. Now the result. I want to check out the result. So how basically I have to split it, right? If you look at what Sarah has done, he has used the function explode. But in Java, there is no function that's called as a explode. We need to write it. So what's dot stream? It's a small string. So what it will do, it will create the input string. Means it will basically send two elements. One is a string ABC, another is string XYZ. Now, each element again I want to split. Means I want ABC will be split as three string. A as a string, B as a string, and C as a string. So how do I do that? I say map, right? W means each element, every word into it. Like ABC, first it will take, then XYZ. So take the ABC as a W. Then what will do on a W? I want to do arrays dot as list W dot split. Okay. Let me explain first this. W dot split will do what? If you give a B, C into it, it basically creates an array. The array have the elements A, B, and C. Right? It will split it into arrays. Split it into array of the strings. Now what I want it to be converted into list. So this part do what? This part, this is what I'm getting as an array. So this is the split function. This is the split function. Now over this output, I'm putting a as list function, which will convert this array to a list. That means this is getting into a B, and C, right? So how many lists I'll get? For ABC, one list I'll get. For XYZ, I'll get one list. Now I want to pack these two lists into a bigger list and send my output. So how I'll pack it as another list? So this function you'll learn on the week 3. So don't worry for the time being if you are not understanding this syntactically. Just try to keep in your mind, it will collect your output. Collectors dot to list. One minute. Collect, will collect it into one. Okay. To list, collected dot to list. So here also you can give a array list if you want specifically array list. If you want a linked list, you can specifically give a linked list. If you want to be very specific about like what kind of list you want. I want to show the output, what my list, the result looks like. So again, I'm saying this line gives my output like this, ABC. Now I'll be basically getting two outputs over here. Those are two lists. One is A, B, and C. And there will be another list which will have X, Y, Z. The last line, collected dot to list, it basically put everything into a single list. So I'll have list of list. So I'll have A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Now, if I just frame this RES, right? My result should be what I have written. So I have a system dot out dot println. I want to print this RES. So you can see you are getting the output as a list of list. Now the simple change will happen if I write a flat list, right? Instead of making list of list, it will put everything in a flat list. So it's a 2-dimension, right? It's a list of list, you can say. So it will put it in a single dimension. So the simple change I have to do over here, I say I'm not deleting this. Let me don't change it because if you want to follow it at your home, your progress, right? So I'll just make it as a flat. So the things happens in the flat map. If I do a split with the flat map, right? Instead of putting it into two different lists, then putting into a single list. So it's the second dimension will be collapsed. It will merge with both the list will be merged into a single. So it's a inflattened list. All the dimension will be collapsed into a single dimension. So we have to just run and see the output. What happened? Oh, sorry. I'm telling it is a single dimension, right? So if I say single dimension, it won't become a list of lists now. What will be the type now? Because I want the output like this. A single dimensional output, right?
So it will be just a list.
Just a list here. So the internal list will be there. right? The internal list has to be removed. So data type we need to remember, right? Because it's getting inflated. What is happening again? The argument, define, and lambda expression. Or instance of the variable exist. 1 minute, let me see. I've changed something over here. I'm getting a stream. I'm splitting it into streams. Then I call for flat map. I'm passing W into arrays. Then I'm splitting it. Okay, then I'm collecting the list. It's all correct, right? What is the problem? For type of the variable. Okay, for the type of the variable. W. Let's see. Give me a moment. I'm not able to understand what is the error. The code looks okay. What I wrote. What is the problem? Words. I'm splitting into stream. Then I call flat map. In every W, I am doing. Oh, sorry. I cannot make a list, right? So it will create in a list. So every array again will be converted into a string. Yeah. So if I do a as list, this internal list will be created, right? I don't want an internal list. So I want everything to be inflattened into a single string. So you can see the things got inflattened over here. So you're getting, if you have multi-dimension also, it will be collapsed into a single dimension. Right? So for use of it, like there is a lot of use whenever you are using a big dimensional, multi-dimensional data sets and all. So you should know this. It is not such important for the exam, but you should keep at least one example which is ready with you, and you should have an idea, right? What it is actually. What happens if I use a map, if I use a flat map? That's very important. Okay, I'll send you this program anyhow. Don't worry about that. So you can run, do some changes over here and check it out how it is working. So I think I have done my part for today. Okay. Okay. So Kubra, you want to continue or? Hello.
So before this, hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Oh, everyone left. Before this 16 quiz 2, no new, I mean, week 9, we are not starting, right? Or we will start?
No, I think so. So, Kubra, are you there? Just I'll call her.
So no one is there. I think it's okay. I mean, everyone left. Even only for me.
Yeah, we can close it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, bye.